Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Hotel Moments. I'm Ray Rodriguez, joined with Stephanie here. And Stephanie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Stephanie Ledger with Firstrate Hospitality. We are a consulting firm based here in Miami, Florida. Primary, our solutions are with training of the employees and then also to providing service evaluation to elevate the services in the hotel.
Perfect, perfect. So today we're going to dive into some nice hot topics here going on in our industry. Everything from the staffing crisis and challenges to how we can recover and make sure that staff or the guest experience and the staff has everything they need in order to provide that top level first rate experience. And really just kind of go on the overall changes you've seen from the industry. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you did prior to starting your own business.
Yeah, so majority of my background comes from Ritz-Carlton in a few properties in Florida and then as well as in New York City. I also too worked with a staffing agency providing training for their employees. And also, let's see, what else did I do? And worked for Forbes Travel Guide, rating hotels if they were a 5-star or 4-star and providing some mystery shopping around the country as well as in China, which was pretty cool.
Whoa, all right. Well, that's definitely provided some unique experiences there for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess easy place to start is tell us a little bit about the differences you've seen between properties in the States versus China.
Yeah, a lot of it is culture is a lot that we see a difference on, especially, in the States, we're very personable, we're engaging. And then, I would have to say elsewhere, it's more about technical, making sure, okay, I need to hand the key like this. But then, we're used to having some kind of engagement with a conversation with, say, the front desk, where they would be very more of like, no, I need to make sure I do this, this, and this. And even when doing training, as well as, they want to know the black and white of how to do everything, where we know in hospitality, there's a lot of gray, where you never know what that next guest coming to you may ask or what their needs or requests are. And, they're very like, no, this, I want to make sure, okay, if the guest asks me that they, want to have go see an elephant or, go and, how to have a certain kind of sushi or item, and then be like, what should my response be? Where it's like, well, you got to ask the questions, and then, what's the way to say no, that's
Yep.
not available for them.
For sure, for sure. Well, and to that point, it's everything going on nowadays has really brought in a new traveler. So a traveler that may not be as seasoned to different items. So definitely has created that need for the industry quite a bit of how do we address and provide this direction to people, especially with everything changing so rapidly on what they can't do and what the best recommendations are. Um, yeah. So with that, how have you kind of seen on your end, just kind of a broad overall picture of the industry change, in your opinion, from 2019 to where we are nowadays?
Yeah, well, especially here in Miami, I mean, we had a stellar last few months with spring breaks. Or hotels were at high occupancy. So, it was a little bit different for this season of ours to kind of seeing how it was compared to, say back in 2019. But, especially in the higher end luxury market, which was one thing that was unique was, we were making sure for the safety of the employees as well as the guests. And we saw, a lot of amenities being cut back. However, the travelers still wanted, their turn down service, their chocolate at the end of the night, or their stayover. Some guests were definitely understood the CDC guidelines and the reason why certain restrictions were in place, but that was, one thing that we kind of saw as a common request is those amenities coming back, and, they're still paying that high rate. And, that's also too where we're seeing, a lot more of the market changed into the Airbnb sector, where usually they would stay at a resort for the week, but now they're, if a lot of the amenities are being cut back, and also too for their safety of themselves, that they felt more safe, being in a house or an Airbnb than, at the hotel.
Definitely, yeah, and it's presented an interesting change in that the industry itself is now seeing that shift where people may not necessarily care about the quality of care if that's an Airbnb. If you're not getting the same amenities, well, why pay that same rate that you would normally see in a hotel? So it's been an interesting shift. And to that point, there's been two recent news where you have some of the select service, focus service properties who are eliminating breakfast, for example. We're saying,
Yes.
well, breakfast is a prime spot where I can save money and save revenue here. If guests aren't really using it, and especially with everything going on right now, people are used to traveling, not receiving it. That's been an interesting shift in mentality as well. I think Wyndham was one of the ones that announced they're kind of leading that way, leading that charge of changing that mentality of how they operate. How do you see that affecting in the select service area in particular, the future experience?
Yeah, and a lot of that too is the consistency for the traveler as well. So they, may have gone to a location, say in Tampa, and so there was, different options available for them. They had prepackaged that was with, eggs and toast and cereal and yogurt, and then they would go somewhere, maybe it was, say, North Carolina, for example, and it was with the same brand, but they saw them, the offerings for breakfast was very different. So I think that's one thing that the brands need to look at in the select service is making sure that they're consistent, because you're going to have those travelers that are brand loyal, that are, when they are getting out to travel, that they, stay so they can collect their points, but now they're going to, be a little thrown off and may not be that loyal because they're not seeing the consistency. And it's just, now with the offerings is making sure that, they are being able to have those touch points of the amenities in the morning with the breakfast, to making sure that the guest is feeling satisfied.
Definitely. Well, and I think that consistency touches on a great point. Of course, back from your time there at Forbes, when you did the travel inspections and you inspected the properties, I'm sure consistency was a big piece of that. How have you seen that mentality shift as well, especially to where things are now?
Yeah, and it's the communication, of seeing the general managers and the regional VPs, on these different groups and these other, LinkedIn, posting, and then being able to communicate to one another, to making sure that they're sticking together and communicating of what they're doing, to making sure that it is being consistent. But then you're also too, you're seeing that the traveler is the one that, it's the traveler's world, where they're the ones that are voicing, they'll be on TripAdvisor or on their different traveling blogs of saying, I stayed here, this was what was different, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't like. And, it's all about making sure that the leadership is acting upon that too.
Definitely. And I guess to that same point, what's your some first-rate advice you would have for the listeners there that with that shift, that change, what have you been kind of guiding people now that we're in this new shift of the industry?
It's really taking what the guest is saying. I mean, I know we have our saying is the guest is always right, but there's a lot of things that you have to look at it, that it is based upon the safety for the employee. And now we have to look at it too with the revenue side. Is this something that we should bring back, a full service breakfast? Is the revenue there? Because we need to look at, how much now of that cost of food are we throwing out, and, where our occupancies are, so that's really where it's looking at, is using the guest reviews at the same with the revenue, to making sure and bringing it down, the communication to the line level staff, especially to the front desk. There's so many things that are going on in the executive level and decisions that are being made, but making sure that the line level staff is understanding to knowing how they need to communicate to the guests. Because if they tell the guests, I don't know, then the guest is going to be like, oh, these people don't know what's going on, but not knowing that there's a lot going on in the back end of things. I mean, not saying all the trades and secrets and everything to the guest, but just how to properly communicate the information to the guest.
Well, definitely, definitely. And that, I think, is the key there, is making sure the team understands, why we're going this direction, why this change is happening. But to that point too, it doesn't mean that's a permanent change. As you shared it, the part of that thought process is taking that feedback you get from the guests, and from the staff, alike, of how they're hearing different sentiment come back to them, and then using that to help tweak things correctly. Because I don't think, I haven't heard of any brand yet that knows this is the way we're going to move forward 100%. This is the correct answer. I don't think anybody has that solution anymore. I think we're all kind of juggling balls in the air here, saying what's going to work, and testing that out, and seeing what's successful and what fails. What have you? Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add it also too, it's by, area and market and everything. So, what's working for down here in Florida is completely different. That could be working, say, up in New York or over in California and the other major cities, because there's other regulations that are going on, or also to different type of guests that they are getting. That's different from, the type of guests that, we may get down here.
Yeah, I can't say I'm envious for the brands on that one. To your point, trying to keep that brand consistency where there is that widespread, what can we and can't we do per state, creates definitely a level of challenges I'm not envious of on that end. But from the partners you have worked with, what's kind of been the general feedback, or direction they've gone on items like this?
Yeah, so, taking in from the guest feedback, so they may have, the guests are saying, what, they're fine with the breakfast being more lighter options, because, they're, especially here in Miami, where there's so many restaurants as soon as you walk out of the hotel. So they're not really known as having that big breakfast rush in the morning. And also to, with business traveling not happening as frequently now, and that used to be the go-to for your business travelers, where you're not seeing that demand there, where you're able to now emphasize and move your revenue amenities over to something else. So we know that they're more by the pool or over into the gym area, or, something else that you may offer even at nighttime with more of the food and beverage outlets, and, gearing your focus more on to that area where you're seeing more of your guests hitting your different amenities.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was actually what I was going to touch on and ask is, how have you seen that shift happen where the properties are still able to provide that high level of service with that shift in amenity now that focus being the pool? I mean, naturally, our first instinct is making sure we're circling, getting through the pool area more often. We're getting the pool towels out there. We're making sure that the area is clean, clear of any glassware, anything that's going to cause anybody any damage or harm, and just make sure to keep an extra eye on it. But how else have you seen, or have you been recommending to properties to help further increase the guest satisfaction while everything's happening?
Well, it's, a lot of it's feeling comfortable with the mask, and then how are you able to present that smile through the mask, and having that engagement with the guest, and, and reading the guest as well. So, there's a lot of guests that they don't want to be with chatty Cathy, and, they are still, having their own safety as well, and not really wanting to interact. And so, it's more of shifting to that employee engagement, and also with the customer engagement of them feeling comfortable being able to engage with the guests while having the mask, or, other PPE equipment, to making sure and being able to even communicate, I'm doing this because these are, the safety guidelines, to making sure.
Definitely. Well, and you touched on a great piece there as well, which was the employee side of it. What have you kind of seen on the employee side for properties? Of course, obviously, again, as we touched on previously, was that, we're kind of going through a staffing crisis. We're finding talent to come back into the industry. There's been a big shift of talent leaving the industry from the most senior members of it. So how have you recommended to properties to help keep and retain their talent and ensure that they're providing that top level service to their own staff as well?
Yeah, so employee engagement, making sure that the staff are feeling appreciative, that they are working for your property and not wanting to go and work anywhere else because they feel valued as an employee. And then they also too, are enjoying what they're doing and providing customer service. So, there is, the elephant in the room is with the staffing and crisis that we're going through. But, this was something that was kind of already starting to see in 2019, pre-COVID, where there was a lot of other industries that were coming into different cities and providing benefits right off the bat, or a higher level of an hourly rates. And so there was more competition, where now they've gathered all of their hospitality experience and they're using that elsewhere and going. But now the hotels are trying to see how can they keep that guest and adding those incentives and being competitive in the market against the other industries. It used to be, and it's pretty much still is that, it would be after your 90 days is when you start receiving, full on benefits, and 30 days for a manager, but you can go to Amazon or a different place and you can get those right off the bat. And so, it's really looking at those incentives, and it doesn't have to be just about the rates, 401k and different other things that you can be able to offer for the employee, and making sure that, you're engaging with them too.
Definitely. Yeah, the days of saying, well, you get a hotel discount, staying anywhere isn't quite enough anymore.
No.
And actually, Florida Atlantic University College of Business, their hospitality and tourism division, of course, just recently released a study that they did. And of course, it touched on a lot of great points, including the fact that, as I was mentioning earlier, that a lot of the staff in hospitality have left, and it's really created a mentality of an industry shift. Did you get a chance to review that by chance as well?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, definitely good to review there and see the study that they completed. But what's your thoughts on that when it comes to the overall thought shift mentality here of going from, how do we do more? How do we give more from an industry perspective to be in line with those industries? As you touched on, 401k, health benefits sooner, ideas like that. Have you heard of any other inventive ideas from properties that they've been doing to try to retain and get more talent?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, it's been with the sign-on bonus, the hotels almost competing with each other, right, down the street of, okay, we're offering 500 and now they found out. So now the, Hotel Down's offering 1,000, and that's, we really want to come together as an industry to, making sure that we're not, going and now throwing each other under the bus and becoming, stealing employees and being competitive. But yes, we are a business that you need to making sure that the guests are taken care of. Mm-hmm. But as far as anything outside of the box, a few things have been with leadership mentoring for the management. So I think that's a great incentive, especially if you had a supervisor that now you have an assistant management position open, that, this is something that would be a great tool for the leadership side, and then also to even offering it with the line level staff, now taking them to the next step. So that's been the one that I really think has been beneficial, is offering that leadership mentoringship. And a lot of it too is, when you're having the line level staffing crisis that you're having, and then as well as the management staffing crisis, because, with management, there's a lot of now roles that have been tied together, so they may have just been the sales manager, and, now they're sales and catering, and also too helping out on operations as well, and so I think that's something that with the hotels, they really need to look at is, how much can you add on to someone's plate before they're going to be like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been that. And I know a big piece of that too, I've been hearing from a lot of people in the industry is that shift too of the more senior roles where you've gone from being a director that now you're an area director and you have multiple hotels you're handling. And how do you really divvy up your time? You know, you had your plate full with one property, now you're trying to take care of multiple properties, as well as are dealing with a shortage of business in the area. Business travel itself hasn't recovered quite yet to the levels that it was before. So we're depending on leisure travel. Well, you know, sales folks were other than the Smurf market, we're not typically going to see a whole lot of leisure market travel. So, you know, how do you really, you know, divvy that up to make sure you're taking care of everybody properly? Yeah, you know, to your point, it's a matter of the industry is shifting in a direction where, well, we can save money and be better efficient over here by giving you more to do, but is that more getting done? So how do you balance that? So I think that definitely is a challenge. Have you had any tips or tricks for those that are in that position, that are taking on more and having to do more of how they can best balance all that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's all about having the honesty and conversations right when you're finding out like this is what's going to be now your new roles. And from an HR perspective, as well as making sure that you have it on your offer letter, making sure that, okay, now you're going to be overseeing multiple departments instead of just one. And then also, too, of seeing, you know, what added, you know, maybe benefits or incentives are offering. You know, now that you are overseeing multiple departments and laundry's done in house, you know, is dry cleaning now going to be part of it? And seeing if there's other different ways that doesn't cost the hotel more, but then still adding benefits for you being able to take on more responsibility.
Very good point. Yeah, actually, a lot of people I've talked to that have had this happen and encountered this, their biggest focus is, well, I, you know, took on more, but my salary stayed the same.
Yeah.
But to your point, did that conversation happen of, hey, here's some other ways we could potentially still get something more out of this, where it's a, you know, still feels like it's a little bit benefit to yourself that you are taking on more and getting more in return, and not just, you know, keeping the fact that you just get to keep your job. I
Yeah.
mean, that in itself is great, but I mean, there's always an opportunity where you'd like to be rewarded for the fact that you're taking on more and doing more. So
Exactly.
definitely a very good angle to keep in mind as well for those that are taking that on.
Yeah. And
Um,
one thing else I wanted to add
yeah,
too is also when you're going through, you know, your offering is, you know, then seeing it also of adding on, it being like, okay, we understand we're still, you know, slowly but surely building up our occupancy, but is this something that we can look 3 months from now or 6 months from now to seeing, you know, if there's a different incentive to being able to add on, or, you know, something with a bonus structure or an added monetary value, you know, where it can't happen right now as the hotels are reopening, but who, you know, as summer season for areas that usually this is their peak season, now they can kind of see after summer, is this something now that can be negotiable?
definitely, definitely. Yeah, very good point. Yeah, and it's definitely, you know, right now, majority of the countries in its slow season starting to ramp back up. I mean, of course, other than South Beach for spring break, which was crazy busy. You know, otherwise, most of the country is still ramping the ramp up phase.
Yeah.
But to that point, you know, you're exactly right. Is, you know, look at the time and say, okay, I know we can't do this now, but if we hit X, Y, Z metrics further, can we look at it then?
Yeah.
It's a great point, great idea. So definitely something to keep in mind. I did want to pivot real quick back
Yeah.
to kind of our earlier conversation of looking at ways that properties can still continue to provide that top level service, and looking at the aspect of um, housekeeping. So you kind of touched on too, is that a lot of people are starting to shift back into housekeeping needs and wants.
Yes.
How do we balance that properly? What is kind of that training or conversations you've had with properties on ensuring that the guest feels like they're taken care of, but still protects our staff on
Yeah.
that side?
Yeah. So one thing that, you know, really working with my clients and especially in housekeeping is housekeeping safety. So now on the market, there's been so many chemicals that are being introduced from a commercial side. It's saying it's all organic, it's killing, you know, all of the germs and disinfecting. And then we have the UV lighting as well for disinfecting as well. Is, you know, we really need to making sure with our employees as well as our guests that safety, you know, being exposed. A room attendant on average, they're going into about 13, 16, sometimes even more rooms a day. And they're being exposed to, you know, all these new chemicals or UV rays, and, you know, just making sure that the employee is being protected, because, you know, I'm afraid to say it, but we may see it in 5 to 10 years of now the exposure to these, and then also, you know, what the repercussions were to it. So that's the first thing when it comes to the housekeeping and looking, okay, we're going into here, we're making sure that it's disinfected, the cleanliness is there, but, you know, what are the employees using to getting to that, and, you know, making sure that all the employees have the proper PPE equipment as well. So that's first, you know, making sure of looking at the standards, and then also too of looking at, you know, with the guest demand of, you know, going into the guest rooms, and once again, communication, you know, saying these are our policies. However, you know, if you do come across a guest requesting, you know, this is the proper way and this is our protocol. So the housekeeper could be, you know, cleaning a checkout room, and then the guest sees them down the hall and says, oh, can you come to my room to clean it? You know, making sure that the staff, you know, is consistent on their communication of talking. And too, is what we train is maybe they're not comfortable in communicating to the guests. And so what is the procedure of how do you get your floor supervisor or your manager or someone else that can be able to communicate, instead of the guests just being like, well, my request went nowhere and no one cares, you know, that I wanted this and I'm paying X amount of money.
Yeah, and that's exactly. You look at a lot of conversations I've had with other properties, is that in the reviews they talk about is that, well, you know, it was people are complaining about, well, I didn't get my room service, I didn't get this done, that done. But to your point, are we setting that expectation? Are we making sure that they understand that, you know, because of protection for our employees, we're doing X, Y, and Z, or we're just not servicing your room at all, or if we're servicing, you can call down and schedule it. But you have to be out of your room. We can't be in your room when you're servicing it. Things like that, like making sure that expectation's laid out. I feel like a majority of travelers that are a little more seasoned understand that, obviously, with things going on, they're not going to service the room. I mean, it's for the best interest for both parties. Yeah. But there's those that are the newer travelers, right? I feel like they're the ones that are raising their hand more, saying, well, I wanted my room cleaned, and it didn't happen. Well, you know, how do we balance that communication? So definitely is a big key in making sure our team knows how to do that as well, or even has a way to make sure the guest at a very easy way to communicate that to the guest on their side.
And I think the brands, they did great with their marketing, you know, partnering with Lysol or partnering with the Mayo Clinic, and, you know, but now, you know, in the guest eyes, they see all of this marketing, but then when training the employee and housekeeping is, do they understand what the guest has seen on the marketing side? So then if I, as a guest, was to come, to, you know, the person I was partnering with Lysol, I think it was Hilton. Then, you know, asking the room attendant, oh, do you have Lysol on your cart, or what are you doing with Lysol, or, you know, what are the things? And then the guest is going to, you know, show, or the employee is going to show their, you know, Ecolab chemical. So just making sure, you know, that the communication is going there from the marketing down to the department, because the guests, that's what they're seeing in the ads and what they're reading about, you know, and making sure that the room attendant is, you know, understanding that as well.
Definitely. Well, and it's one of those points too, is that you look at some of the GMs I've talked to pointed out that in some ways the cleaning itself hasn't changed. A lot of the things that we did are the same things we do still, but just do it in more frequency. So a lot of the things itself is very much so similar to everything that's always been done. So wiping down the doors, wiping down the handles, always something housekeeping's always done forever. They're just doing it more frequently, and they're just being more present about it, so you can see them a bit more.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's changed on that end, but it's just a matter of, to that same point, is people realizing that there's that safety there. Hotels are taking a lot and doing a lot, and they're one of the ones that have been the most impacted though as well from
Yeah.
everything happening. So the industry itself has really had to change its mentality and thoughts on how more of a forward-facing to the guest aspect. So, and I guess so. We're running towards the end of our time here. I did want to see if I know quick
Yeah,
time.
much.
I was going to say, do you have three kind of big takeaways we could share with everybody?
The takeaway is the communication with your team. That is going to be the key that makes you a good hotel to a great hotel, is communicating with your entire team and making sure that they're understanding the guidelines that are in place for your brand or for your individual property. The other thing I would have to say is employee engagement, because it's a tough market out there right now, and so you do not want to lose your employees. And third thing that ties into that is also with the engagement from your HR department. Making sure that you're talking to your HR department of what the needs are that you need and the type of person that you're looking for. And being able to say, what, I can take on this person and I can work with them. But having that communication and employee engagement with your HR department.
Definitely. Yeah. Employee engagement, it's the internal communication, and really it's that mentorship. And it really comes down to it's really making sure that, the staff feels like they're recognized, they're looked after, and they have somebody to go to really, really sum that up for sure. Well, Stephanie, again, we appreciate you joining us and appreciate the time today and sharing all of this wonderful feedback with everybody. This is going to be definitely a lot of great information for everybody to absorb. And to your point, with everything going on right now, we need to focus internally. How can we help our staff internally? So definitely some great ideas, great feedback, and great ways to help make sure we're maximizing that guest experience as well. So definitely thank you again for the time, and definitely appreciate you joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Excellent. Thanks so much.